We'll start recording. Hello and good, lovely, chilly spring morning here. Happy for those of you who are joining us. We're starting the next next unit in this class, Media Law and Ethics. One thing that I'm doing that we will that one thing we're doing here in this class is after the last test, I won't review the test today. I have a couple of people who've emailed and said, hey, I'm sick, COVID or whatever. They couldn't take the test but wanted it delayed, so I'm not going to go over it until everybody finishes taking it, and I will curve up the average, so the grades will improve. However, there's, like I said, a ton of missing assignments, and a lot of the tests didn't turn out well. Now, there were a couple of A's, plenty of B's, more C's, but way too many D's and F's. And, I've done this class before, and this test usually isn't that bad. I think a lot of it has to do with what we do online. And so I'm going to try to get some feedback. And I put a discussion link. It's not graded. Let me know what I can do to help you so you all can get something out of this class. I'm doing everything I can for you to feel that you're getting something out of it. Anyway, the next unit that we're doing is law and ethics. What are the things, we talked about how media has grown, and in the history part, we talked about how media ethics started right here in Chattanooga. But we're going to now go into the how it really works. So we had the basis of it, and now all about law and ethics. Here's the difference between law and ethics from the top.
Like a genie emerging from the bottle. Once removed, there is no turning back. We can only wait and see what will come to pass.
We take great pride in being private and wanting to do stuff on our own without people knowing. And it is a bit scary to think that people will know our whereabouts, what we're doing. And I don't think that should be allowed.
See, those are issues we're going to wrestle with. Privacy. Is there a right to privacy? Who has a right to see your stuff?
You have the right to say, no, you don't get my last name. No, you don't get my address. No, you don't get my phone number. No, I'm not going to use this swipe card for points. So you have the option to say no to those things.
Yep.
I think people lived with the illusion that there was such a thing as privacy, or that you had the right to privacy. And I think maybe you think you have the right to privacy in your own home, but even there, if you've got the internet, your privacy could be compromised through webcams. You could have it with Street View when they were doing pictures of the houses. They were picking up people's passwords, not just their internet passwords, but their banking passwords, their email passwords, that kind of thing. So you have the sense that you have privacy maybe when you close your front door, but even there, not so much.
That's true.
We know in advertising they do that, data mining, like market research, we know. So we're taught how to have proper social media etiquette because we know that employers and everybody will they can mine our information without us really knowing, so.
Well, it depends what kind of information they're trying to sell. Like if it's trying to work information, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I definitely don't feel comfortable with that at all. Yes, they'll definitely limit my postings for sure. I would be very, very selective with what I write and what I put down, and like definitely what I post.
Essentially what Facebook is a massive delivery system to get you into the hands of advertisers. That's what it is. That's how it makes its money.
That's right.
And they're very sophisticated in being able to offer you things that they think you might be interested in. In some ways, it's pretty sinister, the amount of information. I don't think people are aware of the amount of information, what they think is private, that's actually out there and being used by advertisers and or the government.
I think anything that involves monitoring your use. So whether it's on YouTube, they're looking at the fact that, for instance, I look at a lot of documentaries. So now they start to recommend documentaries to me. The obvious examples are the ones where you get an ad that's going to appear on your Facebook page or on and your Google searches. I'll give you a funny example. My partner was away in Florida and I was writing him messages and I wrote every day, "Hi, honey." And then I said whatever I wanted to say to him. And I started getting ads for honey, like purchasing actual bee honey,
We've all been
because
there.
I'd use the word so often, which is kind of amusing. But on the other hand, it's kind of scary. They were reading my email.
I'm personally excited because I'll finally get to put it on and see what it's like for the first time ever.
People want to be connected and technology's enabled that. But a problem is that that technology creates distractions and takes you out of the moment. What we think about on the team is how to solve that problem, how to get technology out of the way when you're doing activity, but have it there when you need it.
Record a video. Okay. Oh yeah, and now I can see.
Google Glass, if you remember, nobody bought it. You just don't know sometimes. This just didn't work.
So this is seeing what I'm seeing now, like, because it is, like, I have a desire to do that, but I don't have to.
You don't have to. You just live your life.
Okay, Glass, take a picture. That's very cool.
Legally, you can film basically on your own property or on public property. So I wouldn't have a problem
We'll
with
talk about
people
privacy.
filming there. But if I'm just like out at a private institution or something, I'd be a little concerned about, like what, because right to privacy, that's like international. So kind of,
Is there such a thing as a right to privacy? We'll talk about that.
I want some places where even if I'm not doing anything wrong, just
I guess I'd want to at least know or see what they see. I guess I don't know.
It depends what it's used for.
Well, increasingly, with the advent of smartphones, any public place, there really is no expectation of privacy anymore. You can see that in some ways it's really good because, for example, there's been a real increase in the number of police being accused and being charged with brutality
Old George
because some of the
Floyd
stuff
thing.
they are doing is now being captured on camera.
Yep.
The flip side to that is a lot of the stuff that isn't really harmful to society, but that may be embarrassing to individuals now is being captured and uploaded to YouTube, sometimes without people's knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's a realistic concern. Yeah, I could see that being a problem. I think that's something that is going to happen no matter what. That is one small problem with technology, and I think that's a kind of a little thing to deal with all the cool stuff that comes out of it.
Our findings presented a wide spectrum of opinions and ideas. We found that individual views and thresholds stabilize between the Judeo-Christian philosophy and the utilitarian perspective. The majority implied that information as a whole is better for society and humanity at large.
Okay. So at the end there, the people they talked about thought, more information is better than less, but not everybody agrees. These are the issues we'll talk about over the next couple weeks. Just lay some groundwork here. Difference between rights and privileges. And then we'll go into law and ethics. A right is something that you are born with, that God has given us. You have a right, according to the Constitution, to have free speech and to exercise religion. You have a right to bear arms. Yeah, those are things that go beyond the government and the government cannot take away. Privilege is something that you can take away. A driver's license. You know, that's something. A grade. That's a privilege. It's certainly a privilege to get an A, and you don't live up to it, you can lose that privilege. So those are good examples. What is education? I'll go into that a little bit. Whoops. And education is there is no right to an education. You know, you have a right to be stupid. You have a right to be ignorant. Now, states can compel you to go to school after a certain age, up to a certain age, but after 18, after 16, they can't stop you. So an education is a privilege. Privacy, interesting story. Now, if we had more people here, I'd ask and have a discussion. We're talking about that in the last little video segment. Privacy is a right. You have a right to privacy. It's decided by the Supreme Court in Griswold v. Connecticut, my home state. Interesting story. The Griswolds were no relation to the people in the vacation movies. The Griswolds were a married couple. They were attorneys who wanted to test these laws out. So in Connecticut, being a largely Catholic state, contraception was illegal. So they crossed the border to buy some condoms. And the condom police stopped them at the border and said, oops, you can't do that. Silly law. But they took it all the way to the Supreme Court because the point was to use a silly law to establish what's private and what isn't. And you can't get much more private than the use of a condom. So Supreme Court in a condom case says because you have a right to privacy, you cannot limit the sale of condoms. Well, you can't ban the sale of condoms. You can keep them behind the counter, but you can't ban them. Sounds silly. That was the same, and this is how courts work. And they based it on the idea that the Constitution says you cannot put troops in your house, that we will have no state religion. Those are private matters. Your religion is a private matter. What you do, you cannot have illegal search and seizure, very private. So under those doctrines, the Constitution says you have a right to privacy. Now, a lot of people say if the Constitution doesn't say it, we don't have a right to interpret it. Well, these people did, and that's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, they decided there was a right to privacy. That case, and this is how these things work, was used as a basis for Roe v. Wade, 1973. Because the Supreme Court again ruled that that is a private matter, that abortion is between a woman and her physician. You may agree or disagree, but they used a silly law as a precedent to base a very serious one. How do you decide about these things? Courts. You have to sue. Okay. That's what we're dealing with. And of course, in free press, you have a lot of those cases. Okay, All right. We'll start off with law and we'll get to ethics later. There are civil laws, are lawsuits. Matters of responsibility. If you are, if there's a construction site and you fall in a hole and break your leg, who's responsible? Are you irresponsible for not noticing the hole in the ground, or is the construction people responsible? Well, one way to find out is to sue. Criminal law is that's robbery, assault, murder. That's, you don't sue, that you just go to jail. You've committed a crime. Case law, written records of previous cases are used to decide current ones. As we'll go back up. Griswold versus Connecticut was used to decide Roe v. Wade. Statutory law, written down by statutory law. We will write a law to make it illegal to invade somebody's privacy. And then the company would say, hold it, we have a right to have somebody's data. Those are those kind of things that come up. Administrative law, like not saying the F-bomb in broadcasting, that gives you a rule. Rules are less strong than laws. Fines or loss of privilege, but no jail. You break a federal law, you could lose your license. You can lose your broadcast license if you have too many F-bombs. You can get a fine, but you're not going to jail. I mean, half the comedians in the country would be in jail if the F-bomb were illegal. So these are the kind of things that fall into. Most Most media cases are civil law. You sue somebody for libel. You sue them for damage to your reputation. Criminal law in media, porn, harassment, fraud, those are criminal cases. But most media cases really fall under civil law and you have to sue. Matters, like I said, libel, copyright. So those. One thing I'd like to mention, should have done it earlier. Laws are written down, enforced by police and courts, can face jail or fines. Ethics may be unwritten. They are about something's unethical. They may be unwritten ethics. They concern personal choices. They are not enforced. There are no ethics police. What are the consequences? May lose a job if you're being over ethics. Lose a job or reputation, but you're not going to go to jail. May lose a job or reputation or friends, all of that. So those are things you can or cannot do. Ethics are things you can do that maybe shouldn't. So, I mean, there are no ethics police or no ethics courts. So this is why we do law first, because it's a little easier. Ethics are squishy. Ethics are ultimately your decision, whether to be ethical or not. So I'll give you the areas that are we really will concentrate on. First, we talked about privacy. There is a right to privacy. So what are the limits of privacy? There are, one of the big ones, libel. Damage to a reputation. That's what a libel is. Has the media damaged your reputation so much that you are actually harmed? We'll start talking about that one probably next time. Big one online, copyright. Who owns your intellectual property? Obscenity. And we will talk about pornography in this class. And there are limits. There are no security and freedom of information. What information are you allowed to have? what's secret and what isn't secret. Those are really the big ones I will put in courts, trials, and criminal. Those are kind of special cases. But these are the big ones that we'll talk about in this class. What's ethical? Sometimes you have legal and ethical issues in privacy. There are things that are limited by law, but there are other things that you can do. Should you, I mean, I can give out my address or phone number. I can post stuff on the internet, but is that nice? If somebody's at a party and they have too good a time and say something stupid or act stupidly, and I have a video, I can post that video, but is that ethical? Those are those sorts of things. And we'll talk probably first thing on Wednesday about privacy. Other ethical issues, cyberbullying. There are limits, but it's mostly an ethical issue. There are some limits. Matters of taste. You can put pictures of naked people on certain platforms. Should you? I mentioned earlier the F-bomb, curse words. Those are matters of taste. You know, I can swear. And the history of photography, there was there was a short thing of, naked people. Well, it's there and it's real. Harassment versus free speech, cancel culture, as we say. Taste and obscenity. Violence. There is no law that says media has to be violent or not violent. There's nothing that limits media violence. Car crashes, explosions, dead bodies, injury. Nope, there are no laws that limit such things. You talk about ratings on video games, that's voluntary. That is, the gaming industry does that, but that's not enforced by law. So violence is a matter of ethics. Diversity. There is no law that says things have to be diverse. There's nothing that says you have to represent X or Y viewpoint. Truth. There is no law that says things in the media have to be true. The limits are you can't libel or rob people with your lies, but there's no law that says everything you have to say is true. So it's up to you to decide. So there's a lot of stuff out there that is truly ethical. And we'll talk about that. Remember, we did codes of ethics? Codes of ethics are guidelines, but they're flawed because there's no enforcement power. I'm sure there are others. There are other topics, but these are the big ones I'll go over. Just some other leftovers, modern stuff, right? Journalists, media people have no more rights than anybody. There's no, journalists and media people are not a special class. It's just that we're the ones who are dealing with this more often. Free speech on campus. Yeah, we talked a little about that. We talked about the First Amendment and what's right and wrong there. What does the campus have a right to stop you from saying? Talk a little about that. Social media, huge, obviously. We talk a lot about privacy. We talk about harassment. We talk about truth. All of that are things we deal with in social media, and it's all ethics. You cross the line when somebody really gets hurt, but how do you determine whether or not somebody gets hurt? You have to sue. And how many people have enough money for lawyers to sue somebody? So a lot of bad stuff gets out there. Cyberbullying, a lot of you talked about in some of your essays. Yeah. At what point is bullying free speech? If I say, gosh darn it, I don't like my sister-in-law with whom I disagree with everything politically. Is that bullying if I say that we don't get along? Actually, we do get along. But, you know, at what point is something free speech and in what sense is it bullying? Freedom of information. What do we have access to if you're arrested? Or if somebody's watching you? You know, or if there is a stalker or a convicted sex felon in your neighborhood, do we have to know? Do we have the right to know? Is there such a thing as a right to know? Yes and no. There is a right to privacy, and there is a right to have information from your government. Crime scenes. What do you do at crime scenes? Fires, floods. We'll talk about that. Free press versus fair trial. Right now, we have the Derek Chauvin trial, the guy who, the police officer who killed George Floyd. Again, George Floyd died because of police officer Chauvin kneeling on his neck. Can the police officer get a fair trial because of all the media coverage? Is it the police officer's fault? Was there an accident? That's what you do at trials. How does the press screw up that? Well, that's a question. National security. How much, we talked about the Vietnam War. You see bad things happen in a war situation. Should we have the right to see that? Or are we undercutting our national security by giving you information? Valid question. Other stuff. Want other stuff to talk about? This is your time. I'll probably put another discussion board out there for people want to discuss ethical issues. Anyway, that's what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks. We will start with privacy on Wednesday and probably get into a little bit of libel. So we're gonna cover all of this stuff over the next few weeks. This will take us to mid or late April. Okay, that's what we're gonna be talking about for a while. I'll have an extra credit question posted on Wednesday. And probably come up with other stuff to try to help your grades. Because I really want y'all to do better. Hopefully, you'll kind of groove on this stuff a little bit more than the history stuff. Anyway, those of you who are here, do you have any questions? Okay. Lovely day out, if a little chilly. You have a great rest of your day. Okay.